there is somebody for everybody.
Yes.
Everybody has people who want to be their friends. It'll come to you in time. And one final thought on this would be, oh, this is very nice. Very nice. This is it, Chris.
It's happy.
Can this just be our theme song every week? I love it. That's perfect. Interesting.
Wow.
Okay.
How about that little piece there?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, just pop you up.
Might have lost me.
You like the very, very beginning more, huh?
Yeah. Did you see me get my finger up? Like I
I
knew.
thought you knew the song when you did that.
I knew it was gonna hit, but
But it was a big
It
hit.
didn't hit the way I thought.
Because
Yeah.
it was like,
It like went from Andy Griffith to Metallica, which was
no, not Metallica.
a jump too far. not
it wasn't Metallica
It wasn't
level.
Metallica.
But you did
Yes.
time your finger up with that drop
Yeah,
really well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the On Purpose Parents Podcast. Kurt Johnston, Grace Yoon,
Hello, everybody.
producer Chris,
You
over
can call
in
me
the corner.
Board Bender, Chris.
Oh,
Board.
why?
What's that mean? What?
Surfer. It's like,
What?
I don't know.
Have
I
you
thought
been
it was a cool
surfing?
surfer
No,
name.
you know what? You're right.
Is
You
that
know what?
lame?
You got it right. You don't know. I've never ever heard the phrase board bender in my life.
The actual one surfer in this room right now is like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, gosh, knowing what I know about surfing, if you're a board bender, is that good or bad?
I thought it was
That
good.
sounds bad.
It sounds bad.
You don't want your board to bend.
No, well,
Or do you?
Interestingly enough, you want a certain amount of flex
Oh, okay,
in your board.
Yes.
So you do want it to flex a little
With
bit.
you, but not bend.
I don't know.
right.
Anyway, well,
won't
hey,
use that again.
it's good to see you guys. It's good to be back.
It's
In
been
this-
a hot minute
It's been
with
a hot
Kurt.
3 weeks.
Hot 3
three
weeks.
episodes.
Yeah, 3 episodes.
How'd you guys do without me? Let's just be honest.
Grace carried us as
No,
normal.
no.
She's fantastic. And
Chris
it
was
was
great. Chris was great in the hot seat. We missed you. We had surf pictures up on the wall in your honor.
You call it the hot seat. I call it the chair of wisdom.
The chair of wisdom. Wow.
That's almost as bad as board bender. I mean, that's almost like, what are you talking about?
Well, when you were gone and I was
throne.
sitting in it, was chair of despair.
Here's what I'm gonna say. I
Nice
listened.
rhyme.
What are we? Yeah, well, I listened to all 3 episodes, and Chris, you're great.
Yeah.
Here's what I think about when I hear Chris sitting in the chair doing the
Of
podcast.
despair.
He's
right, here it comes.
He's just so warm.
Yes.
He's
That's
just
a really good
he's
word. Mm-hmm.
just so warm and reassuring, encouraging.
His voice is like very soothing too.
Oh, yeah.
Like
It's like-
Grace,
yes.
Kurt. It has
Yes.
this like kind of supple nature
Chris
to it.
is to talking what Barry White is to singing.
Oh wow.
Made me a little romantic, Chris. Made me a little bit romantic. While I was, okay.
Where are we going with
I don't
this?
know. Well, hey, as we do, we've found a good little rhythm, and we just did a 3-episode series talking about resiliency, specifically stress.
Yeah, building up our kids' self-esteem. How can they deal with failures in their lives? How do they think about failure?
Yeah.
And how do they handle stress? Are all things that can help build a resilient
Right.
kid.
So if you missed any of the last 3 episodes, or if you have a friend who you think, man, it would be awesome for them to hear this, resiliency is one of the biggest character traits or qualities or skills
Yeah.
that we can build into our children is
Absolutely.
this ability to rebound, to bounce back, to overcome, right? To get back up when you've gotten knocked down. However you want to phrase it.
Yeah.
Resiliency is a really big deal. I was watching a show. It was an episode of comedians getting coffee in cars or whatever that is
Oh,
with
okay, yeah,
Jerry
yeah, yeah.
Seinfeld.
That's great.
And they saw some kid on a skateboard, and Jerry Seinfeld made this statement. He said, you know what? People give skateboarders a bad rap. When I look at a teenager skating, I think that kid's going to be okay because they have failed so many times trying to figure out how to do that trick.
Right.
They've broken their wrists, they've fallen, and yet they were dedicated. They figured it out. And so when people badmouth teenage skaters, I look at them and think,
You've built up the skill
they're going
of
to be
resiliency.
they're going to be okay. It's a resiliency statement.
Yeah.
So if you
That's
haven't
pretty cool.
if you haven't listened to that, please do. Today, as is part of our routine, we're going to do a Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
And then next week we're going to take one question that we didn't address today that we thought needs a little bit
We'll dedicate a whole episode on that.
to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump right into it, Chris. These are random questions, not around a topic necessarily.
Yeah,
or
well-
they're not connected to each other.
Yeah, no, they're not really, but they've all come in since it's kind of back to school time right now, and they all have that theme to it, a back to school theme. But the first question is, how can I best support my child as we transition back to school?
Great. Relevant question.
I feel like we both need to just yield to Grace because she's got two
she's right
daughters
there.
she's right in it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
talk to us, Grace.
Yeah. So my thought to this question, and really my thoughts apply to any kind of transition. I think it's not just the transition of going back to school, but the process of any change, what change does in general, is that I think it's really important that we just acknowledge and embrace that transition periods are uncomfortable, they're awkward, and they're potentially stressful and challenging for everyone involved. And that may seem like an obvious statement, but the reason why I wanted to point that out is I think a lot of times when change happens and then we go through a period of transition to the new norm, right? Because we're changing from the old norm, to the new reality. When we're in that period of transition, things are not as smooth or as comfortable or as familiar as we want it to be. And that means that mistakes could happen, or we might get into more of an argument, or things are a little bit more intense in our conversation.
Everything's heightened a little bit.
Everything's a little bit heightened and maybe a little bit more anxious. Some people might feel anxious about it, like the unknown, it's not just familiar.
Yeah.
And there can be this subliminal thought that, oh, this season of transition is now my reality. This is what's going to be forever. And mentally, we can get more stressed out. We add on to the stress that already exists in a period of transition because we think, like when there's a change, and I could just think about this even at like work, when there's transition and things aren't as smooth during that period of transition, you think, oh, this is going to be terrible. This is what life is going to be like forever, and things aren't great. But the reality is that period of transition is a transition. It's temporary. And so when we kind of approach it with the mindset that, hey, let's expect that things are going to be a little wonky, that may be clunky, we may like forget to do things, or there may be a lot of adjustments that we point out that we didn't do well this first time around.
Yep.
That's perfectly okay. So when we have that as parents, we can breathe a little bit of peace into our home vibe. And just then, I think the important thing is then creating that safe space for our kids, that when they experience those discomforts of transition period, we can give them that encouragement back and that affirmation that this is totally normal.
Right.
This is cool. We're going to work this out together. And don't forget, in like about a month, we're going to get this.
Right.
It'll be smoother sailing.
Right.
So don't what is the word? Catastrophize?
Catastrophize.
Catastrophize?
Over exaggerate?
Like,
yes, all of them, yes.
Overemphasize what feels uncomfortable now to be something bigger than what will be in the future.
Yeah, it's really kind of like saying, yes, right now is really tough.
Yes.
But I think you're going to get used to this. You're going to get better at A, B, C, or D.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Shauna Ningquist. Does that name ring a bell with either of you? She's an author, a mom, very popular author, and she writes a lot of mom stuff and Christian living stuff. But they made a huge transition, and their kids, I think, were probably about your kids' age.
Okay.
And they moved like to another state, a different part of the country. And when they got in the new schools, their kids were coming home saying, I'm no good at math, because they were this new school was a little bit further ahead than their old school or whatever. So they had some catching up to do.
Yeah.
And they were catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing.
They were catastrophizing.
There is some word.
Yes. And she had a great statement where she said, "How about if we say this? How'd she phrase it? Something like, we're not great at it yet. We're not great at it yet.
Yeah.
We haven't learned that yet. We're not all the way there yet,
Yes.
right? But we'll get there. But
Love it.
it's okay to say, instead of saying I'm terrible, this is terrible. No, you haven't learned that yet. You're not all the way there yet. Is I think kind of what you're saying too.
Yes.
Yep. It's okay to acknowledge where we're at, and then kind of pivot and say, but it's going to get better. And that was kind of my point was.
That's good.
The acknowledging seems to be a favorite word because you had acknowledge and I have acknowledge. But acknowledge the anxiety, acknowledge the fear, acknowledge the struggle of this new school year, the nervousness, and reinforce or focus on the positives. So I think we what we don't want to do is minimize the fears, the anxiety. Hey, don't worry about it. You don't you don't want to do that because then that's minimizing what might be a very small. Why are you struggling with that?
Yeah.
To us,
Exactly.
what's very small to us is a big deal to our kid in the moment. So we want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I know transitions are tough. Man, I know. It's your first day or your first week, your first month by the time this episode breaks of junior high.
Right.
Yeah, I know junior high is scary, right?
You have to find your
acknowledge that,
locker.
and let's talk about that. And now, hey, but there's some good stuff too. Like, what's been going right at school?
Yeah.
What are you enjoying? What are you finding out that you're better at than you thought? And so, really, kind of helping them frame it in a way that is honoring and acknowledging to the struggle. But don't let them live there.
Right. You're channeling it.
You're kind of channeling it towards. We're on this journey.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I don't need to say much more because so much of what I would have said is exactly what you said. So
That's awesome. I love that. Oh, I did wanted to add one more
please.
thing. Just another practical thing parents could do is also during this time, especially, is to think intentionally about creating a consistent routine and then prioritizing sleep. So that's just a little practical tip.
Yeah.
Because summer times, it's a lot more loosey-goosey, maybe like late night watching movies. I'm just speaking for my own kids. It's like, it's fine. Yeah, sure. Stay up till 11.
Yes.
It's fine.
Summer rules are
Summer
different than
rules.
school year rules.
It is, and that's cool.
Yeah.
That's great. But there are a lot of studies that show that there are incredible positive outcomes when there is routine, because it creates a sense of stability and predictability for the kids. So they feel in control of their environment. It makes them feel safe and secure. They know what's happening next. They know how to handle an activity because they've gotten some advance warning for that. Now, this isn't saying you have to be like super regimented. If you're a parent that likes to be scheduled, I mean, this could make you maybe like incredibly inflexible. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're maybe on the other end of just kind of being loosey-goosey and, oh, my kid is stressed, so I'm just going to go with the flow. Actually, having a routine set up in some sort of predictable schedule and then being a little bit maybe more of a stickler early on about putting your kids to bed on time and allowing them to get adequate sleep can really just provide a lot of health in that situation.
When we were raising our kids, we had a friend who she would purposely get into the school year routine about a week before school started.
Oh, nice.
Just to
Smart.
ease them into it because the whole thing, hey, this summer's loose.
Yeah.
And we don't have too many rules, but and instead of doing a cold turkey, she did a 1 week transition, easing in. Yeah.
That's great.
That's so good. That like the two things that I heard you guys saying, you in particular, Grace, were like promote healthy habits, with the routine. And Kurt, you were like, be present. It's important to be present as a parent. And I think promoting healthy habits, we can kind of go overboard with one of the particular domains of their life. Like it's the intellectual one right now. So we're just going to make sure that, that becomes the whole focus when it's like, well, no, there's the physical piece too. They need plenty of sleep. They need to be eating healthy because that affects their mood and their energy level. And supplements, important to take supplements. And just the whole exercise piece is important too. Getting
being
outside
active,
and being
playing.
active. But then there's also the spiritual element that's important to keep too, right? Reminding the kids, hey, connect with God throughout the day, every day. Just go to Him in prayer, at school, and because we want him to succeed both inside and outside the classroom during this time, right? And encourage what I was thinking with you is just how a lot of times, I know I did this for so many years. You're dropping the kids off, taking them, and they're doing their homework, and there's all this separation. You're doing your thing, they're doing their thing. And I think for us to just show up, to be present, and to listen, be a great listener, ask questions, let them, and just process with them.
Right. You don't have to solve everything right away. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Good input.
Okay, another question. My child seems to be having a tough time making friends. Do you have any advice on how I can provide the right support during this phase?
Big question.
Big question.
Friendship question.
Yep. Well, I'll lead with the word acknowledge. That's our favorite.
That's the word of the day.
That's the word of the day.
Brought to you by
that and castrification.
Be careful.
Castrification
wait,
is something different.
Hold on.
Catastrophic. Catastrophic castrification.
That would be catastrophic.
Wow. Both words are wrong, but we get the point. Okay.
Hopefully it's coming across.
Yes. Acknowledge.
Yes.
I would start with friendship conversations are huge. So I think we just need to acknowledge to ourselves as parents, because sometimes the older we get, the further removed we are from the years when the friendship thing was as big a deal.
Right.
By the time we're our age, our friendships are still a big deal, but they're probably not as fraught with anxiety and my friendships aren't shifting day to day. I'm not afraid of saying the wrong thing to the cool kid and being shunned, but friendships are a big deal.
Right.
But sometimes we project our adult understanding of the friendship journey onto our third grade kids,
Right.
or onto our junior high kids. Junior high is the classic time when friendships go bonkers and they start shifting. Elementary age friendships oftentimes are a little bit more consistent. They're oftentimes because mom and dad are friends with these people, so I'm friends because of proximity, or we're on the same baseball team or whatever, Junior high, it gets bonkers. Junior high, it suddenly becomes a lot more like who's in, who's out, all that kind of stuff. And in junior high, kids begin to shift their friendships a lot because it's like, well, I've always been friends with Bobby, but now Bobby's totally into sports, and I'm not as much. I'm more into gaming or reading or whatever it is. And so I look for other friends who are into gaming. And sometimes parents will say, but you've always been friends with Bobby. You can't not be friends with Bobby. And I would encourage our parents to recognize that as your kids enter early adolescence, it's healthy and natural and normal for the friendships to start shifting. You have to coach them and guide them. And how do you do that in a healthy way? If you're not going to be friends with Bobby anymore, how do you navigate that well, and maybe talk to Bobby and Bobby, sometimes things naturally, a lot of friendships naturally. So parents, I would encourage you to embrace the fact that their friendship circles might change. Pay attention, because you got to pay attention to who they're friends with as they get older, because the consequences of a unhealthy friendship circle, the consequences are bigger and bigger as your kids get older and older. My grandson Miller, he's 3, about to turn 3. I don't know if there's any punky 3-year-olds that like, hey buddy,
having friendship dramas?
Dude, don't hang out with that 3-year-old. He's smoking cigarettes behind during the puppet show at church or whatever. But elementary, junior high, high school, hey, parents, pay attention to those friendships. So to help your kids navigate this, I think, is not a one-time. It's not a one-time. We're going to talk to them about the importance of good friends, and then check it off our box. You have to be dialed into this one all the time, and talking to them and paying attention and asking them questions instead of saying, man, why in the world are you friends with Bobby? He's a dipstick, right? You can't do that. Hey, talk to me. Hey, I notice you're becoming better and better friends with Bobby. Talk to me about that. What is it about him that you really like? And right. And so
Oh, I
then,
like that.
then you
Yeah.
earn the chips to say, well, here's something I've noticed that I think you should maybe pay attention to, because it could cause some struggles. But acknowledge as a parent how big of a deal all that is to them. We understand the importance of it, but we're not caught up in it. Our kids are caught up in it.
Right.
And their sense of popularity and self-esteem and their place on the ladder at school, so much of that, perception-wise and reality, the way the teenage child world works is kind of connected to their friendships. And so we want to really kind of acknowledge the seriousness of that and be appropriately engaged in helping them navigate that. And I would just have lots of conversations about, what are you looking for in a friend?
Yep.
What kind of friend are you trying to be? Like you should be the kind of friend you hope to
want.
find.
Yeah.
You should be the kind of friend that you want. Like, so just having those conversations, there's a little bit of preemptive planning so that as they go out there, because you don't have to be friends with everybody.
You don't. Yeah, that's right.
You don't have to be friends with everybody, even some nice kids.
Right.
You don't have to be friendly with every nice kid. You have to be friendly. You have to be kind.
Yeah.
But you don't have to become buddies with everybody who you could become buddies with.
Yeah.
And just helping them navigate all that kind of stuff. If there's a parent out there, and I'm not sure if this is the question, if this is a heart behind the question, like, well, my child just doesn't make friends well. Is having a hard time finding friends. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Talk to them about that. Let them know that, maybe there's one or two buddies. Maybe you don't need 15. Like and help them think through, like, well, and again, these conversations are easier with older kids, right? But are you the kind of person, are you acting and behaving and treating people in a way that, the Bible says, if you want friends, you have to be friendly, right? So how are you perceived? How are you treating people? Are you the kind of, and if you can kind of check those boxes off, friendships will come to you eventually. Friendships will come to you.
I love the word you said a few times was navigate. And really, the essence of what you described is that it's not a one size fits all, because the scenario can be different. The child can be different.
Yeah.
And so just you exemplifying some of the questionings, like how you might ask your own child, hey, what's going on with Bobby? And I think that's so beautiful, because you're not just trying to solve the problem. It's
Right.
not like you didn't say, okay, you're not going to be friends with Bobby, but you're going to be friends with Joe. There, I solved it. Here,
Right.
go do it. It's more you're inviting them into being reflective about their own journey and their experience. And I think that's actually more empowering to the child in their journey of friendship than just saying this is the solution and drawing a conclusion, but you're inviting them to actually be thoughtful themselves. Like,
Yeah.
okay, is it something I'm doing? Is it something I could maybe be more proactive on my end? Like, I don't have to always wait to, for someone to say hi to me. Could I say hi to somebody? Like,
Right.
getting them to think about that. That goes into just the thing that I wanted to share too was, I think it's really important to keep in mind that making friends is a journey, and that people go at it at different paces or just completely looks different.
Yeah.
So like an extroverted child may have a lot of friends.
Right.
And it just looks like they have this vibrant social life, compared to maybe someone who's more introverted may have like one best friend.
Yeah.
And like not really into hanging out with a bunch of other people in a group.
And an extroverted parent looks at that and says, why don't you have more friends?
Yes.
And the child's an introvert going, I don't need more friends.
Right. Like you think like an extroverted parent might be like, my
Concerned.
child's a loner.
Right.
Or something's wrong.
Right.
Now, I like what you said is to be dialed in and pay attention, because again, there isn't like a one size fits all. Like there could be an introverted child that does need help with making friends.
Right.
But it also could be that they're okay and we just encourage the friendships that they have. But
Yep.
your point of pay attention, what's actually going on with your child? Is it your anxiety or is it something that does need help? You can just be more aware of what's going on. And I'll give the example. Like I do have that with my own two girls. My older girl, Karis, is the more extroverted type. So she just naturally makes friends. During her elementary school, we had so many birthday party invites. Like we were just always like getting invited to, Chuck E. Cheese here or park, birthday party.
Yep.
But with Zoe, we thought last year, we're like, Zoe, did you get invited to any birthday parties? And we were like, oh, maybe one, but we were out of town. And so there's a stark difference.
Yes.
My second child, Zoe, doesn't really need that crowd as much. In fact, she really dials in one-on-one really well. I think she is more of an introvert in nature. And so the question could be, are we concerned? Is one better than the other? And Sam and I's assessment right now is we're not concerned, because when Zoe is with her friends, it's very healthy.
Right.
Like it's not like, if we notice certain social skills that we need to develop, we'll talk about it, but we don't see too much of that.
Right.
It's more just, she just doesn't.
She's wired different.
She's just wired differently.
Yeah.
And she's actually okay being by herself more than Karis. Karis is like, who's coming? Who's coming?
Right.
I want to know who's there.
Yeah.
And so just, that's just something mindset to keep in mind for parents. And then some practical tips, if you want to encourage that, is you could look for extracurricular activities that your kids enjoy and to help them just create that environment to meet peers with
Yeah,
similar
that's good.
interests.
Yep.
You could arrange play dates with, families that you like, and just see if that
Yep.
works out with your kids as well. Because sometimes one-on-one and not necessarily like a school setting might be more conducive for your child to get more comfortable and break the ice. You can role play to teach some social skills. And you were alluding to that, Kurt, about just helping the child be aware. How am I showing up as a friend?
Right.
Or in this social group? Am I aware of the vibe that I'm giving out? So you can
Right.
practice that at home. And again, the last thing I'll say is you can really, the way it looks like externally can be different, but as long as you are building the skills of friendship and social interactions at home between you and your child, between the siblings, then eventually they will make the friends at the right time,
Yeah.
at the right pace.
Yeah.
It's, are they developing in their character, in their social skills? And you just focus on that. And then the number of people or the quality of friendships will come at the right time.
That's good. There's an old saying, and they use it for like people who are looking for a mate, people who are having a hard time dating or whatever. Hey, don't worry. There's a lid for every pot. Right? There's a lid for every pot. And I think that applies to friendship too. Like there is somebody for everybody.
Yes.
Everybody has people who want to be their friends. It'll come to you in time. And one final thought on this would be, every now and then it might be okay to recognize, if this is true, that your child is working so hard to be accepted and included in a circle of kids that just for whatever reason is closed to the idea.
Yeah.
And that's where you say, you know what? You're amazing. You're
Yeah.
awesome. You're wonderful. If they want to miss out on having you as a friend, that's okay. But quit working so hard to be accepted
Yeah.
by a group of
That's
kids
good.
who, for whatever reason, they're just not into you. That's not the right way to say it. You gotta say it soft.
Yeah.
Right.
But pivot a little bit.
yeah.
Like there's kids at your school who want to be your friend. Maybe you need to quit fixating so much on being accepted by this group of kids
That's good.
and look for the kids who would welcome you into their friendship circle.
Yeah, that's kind of like in line with your the answer to the other question, which is you're acknowledging their feeling, but then you also help them pivot.
Right.
As a parent, you have that influence to acknowledge where they're at, but then guide them towards
Right.
where should I fixate my thoughts
that's
on.
good.
That's really good. Love that.
Well, I'm trying to be a part of this surfer culture, so I come in with the
With your
board
board
breaker,
bending?
board bender.
Chris,
Yes, aqua swell, Kurt.
we will not accept you.
no, now you need to take him. Now you need to take him to the next
find
surfing
another
adventure.
group, Chris.
I'm gonna still try, man.
Find another group.
I think I can weasel my
Board
way in.
Benders International.
board breakers.
You know, but Kurt, I like what you said about the idea of, is your child struggling with having friendships? Is this kind of like a pattern in their life? Or is it a time, even of when you were talking, it made me think of like a time of transition. We moved from California to Florida, 3,000 miles. We knew nobody where we were at. And my kids were in elementary school, junior high school, and high school. And the younger ones, the girls, man, Macy, Joy, and Kaylee, they connected so well, so fast. My son, Jacob, man, the first month was, oh gosh, okay. Excuse me. The first, it's still coming up. Parenting's so crazy and hard. But he was eating lunches alone. He was at, snack time alone, like completely by himself. And when I would talk with him afterwards, the girls are great. And then, but Buddy's like, oh my, I don't understand, Dad. It's so, but he's more introverted with that. So I said, it'll just take some time, kind of like what you guys are saying. It just takes some time. So he got involved in a sport and was doing, but it's hard to see your kids go through that.
Yeah.
And then it's also because you're so busy with so many things, it's hard to sit there and listen to them and think about, gosh, do I need to know all this advice to give? I mean, parenting is so tough on so many levels, right? But the stuff you guys shared was super helpful, I know.
Yeah, thanks
so
for sharing.
The third question, how do you suggest we strike a balance between academic expectations and letting our child simply enjoy being a kid?
Well, I'm going to go first and let Grace share good input.
Yeah.
because my answers are going to be very direct and very opinionated on one side.
Oh, okay.
And that is, who cares about academics?
Oh, wow. You're laying it down.
Who cares? The younger they are, the less you give a crud about academics. They'll learn to read. They'll learn to write. They'll learn whatever the math is at the moment, new math, old math, whatever the math is. They'll figure it out. Not every kid is going to go to college. That's okay. That's okay. Some kids are going to make more money as a welder than the girl or the boy who has their master's degree and they're a college adjunct professor. And mom and dad are pushing and hoping they'll go to college and get their master's and walk away with $100,000 in debt to make 30% less than the welder.
The welder.
So I think academics do matter. I just think what you want to pay attention to are all the other things that matter. Their character, right? Are they kind? Are they honest? Do they have social intelligence? Forget about, if you look at the studies, I don't know what the studies are. Grace knows what the studies are.
Yeah. There's some studies.
If you look at the studies, with very few exceptions, there's always these outliers. But when it comes to long-term financial success in X industry, it doesn't really matter what industry, emotional intelligence and social intelligence is always more important than intellect. So I would just really pay attention to helping our kids develop social skills, the character traits, your family values, all that stuff, and put academics in their proper place because they do play a role. We're all college educated. We all have advanced degrees in this room. So we get it.
Right. You're not saying quit school and don't study.
I'm not saying quit school and don't study. I am saying you might want to tell your graduating senior to quit school and quit studying and lean into some other area that they're wired to do. My son dropped out of college and he makes significantly more money than I do.
Let's just put it out there.
So, I mean, well, he knows. I mean, so he reminds me.
Yeah. He doesn't let you forget.
we compare cars and we compare. But we had a moment because we had been leaning into, we knew he wasn't wired for college, but we've been kind of leaning into it.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of him because he manned up and came to us and said, Mom and Dad, it's not what I want to do. Here's a different plan. And
he had a plan.
He had a plan. And so we said, well, you know yourself better than we do, and we trust you. And our job is just to help you succeed in life. And so we will pivot our expertise and our prayers and we'll put wind in your sail in a different direction than we were when it came to college, if that makes
Right.
sense. You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, those are my thoughts.
And the thing that you said at the very end, because some people may hear that like academic is not the most important thing. Hearing you say that, and they might immediately associate that with is you don't want your kid to be successful.
Right.
But that is not what you said, because at the very end, what you said was our job is to make our child, support our child, our son in being successful in life.
Right.
It's just we are tuned in to figuring out what is that path.
Yes.
And that path may not be going to get a doctorate
Right.
as the roadway
Yes.
to success.
Yes.
So
Now-
you're not like abdicating your role of
No.
supporting your children
Right.
in success in life.
And the tension is, you sure do want them to have the option,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So you got to be careful, and I think that's probably where this question comes from, right? Is more and more, if they do want to go to college, you got to start thinking about that in junior high. So you take the right junior high classes,
Right,
so you
yeah.
can take the right high school classes, so you can. And so there's like this, you work backwards and realize academics do matter if I'm going to go to college.
Right.
So I'm not suggesting you just blow that all out and whatever happens happens. I'm merely reminding parents that the path is different for every kid. And some of your kids, you have to light a fire under them to think about academics. Some of your kids, you might need to dial it back and say, don't worry about it so much. If you don't get into the college you want directly, if you're on a wait list, if you're put on the wait list for a college, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And mom and dad, it's not the end of the world if your son or daughter gets put on the wait list. We parents always get accused of living vicariously through their children when it comes to sports and things. We live vicariously through our kids when it comes to academics.
Oh, yeah.
And what school they get into.
The grade that they get.
And it's embarrassing if
performance.
my
Yeah.
daughter has to go to community college for 2 years. Praise the Lord, she wants to go to community college for 2 years. Think how much money it saves you.
Yeah.
And she's still gonna graduate from the same 4-year university, but it's gonna cost her half as much.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Right.
I'll get off my soapbox.
No, that's great. Appreciate that perspective and sort of, you dropping down what is the frame? The gauntlet there. My thoughts actually are not
Quite
they're-
so firm.
No, maybe not quite so firm, but they're not inconsistent with what you're saying. And
Okay.
so my first thought was, really, I think this is such a great question that the parent asked, because it shows some, I think, inkling or awareness that a well-rounded childhood, and I'm going to speak more from a younger child perspective, is not just about academic success. And it's actually, it's also, found so many studies that we've talked about in past podcast episodes that we've done, that how play and relaxation within a kid's life plays such a vital role in their emotional and cognitive development. So the play is not just for play's sake. When kids are playing, whether it's sports or with friends or kind of this unstructured free time, their brain is developing in ways that actually can help their academic journey. So there's a lot of studies about that too. So one thought there is to help figure out this balance between academic and just letting kids be kids is I definitely encourage parents to create that schedule for unstructured time of play. And I think for parents right now, with parents of kids my age, having unstructured time is actually very uncommon. There's a lot of pressure right now because we are so tapped into so many resources and everything's online and you can see things that are happening, is to structure every part of the day. You go to school and then afterwards you go to volleyball practice, and then after that you have piano practice, and then you got to get ready for bed, and the next day you do this. And then if it's sort of like downtime, you see all your other parent friends like, oh, we're just going to the soccer game or the football game, and you're like, oh wait, what are we doing?
Right.
Like, what do we gotta do? So there is this tremendous pressure to be busy. And all of those activities are not bad. A lot of those extracurricular or school or chess class or all of those things are great. But that unstructured period of time of play is also something that you could weave in. And if it's woven in, don't feel bad about it.
Right.
Don't feel guilty about it, because actually having our kids be bored, right? Because that's another thing that we sometimes get super sensitive about. If kids are like, oh, I'm bored, we're like, oh, you're bored. Oh my gosh, we got to like find something for you to do. But actually, there are other studies I remember reading, and this really helped me, is being bored helps kids be creative.
Right.
They can think for themselves. Like, well, what do I want to do with my time? No one is spoon feeding me some stimulation. I have to think of some stimulation for my brain myself. I have to learn sort of that discomfort of like stillness before the activity. I remember that was just one thing, is when my kids come up to me after I read that article or that study. A lot of times it's this joke now in my family, but my kids will come up to me and they'll be like, oh, I'm bored. And then I'll be like, oh, I have a great idea. And their eyes get really big and they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, you can use your imagination. And then of course they're like, and they groan, but like they keep falling for it so many times, and then I cackle and I crack up because they keep coming to me. I'm like, oh, I got it. And then they're like all like pumped up, and I'm like, you can. And then they know now. They're like, but then what they do is they'll run off and they'll use their imagination, and they'll be great.
I was not allowed to say I'm bored as a kid.
Really?
Yeah, if I said it, my parents got so upset. And it was go do something. I call it the lost art of staring at clouds.
Oh, I love that.
It's the
That's
lost
beautiful,
art
actually.
of staring at clouds, right? And it's a little bit of a stereotype and a meme of kids laying on their back in a field looking at the clouds going, that one looks like a lamb. That one looks like a motorcycle. That one looks like a board bender, right? Or whatever. But kids don't do that anymore.
Right.
It's the lost art of using our imagination and filling downtime.
Right. Yeah. And then the other thing I'll say is, again, just to not say that we're completely devaluing academics and studying and the benefits that come from having discipline and doing things that you don't necessarily want to do. Like studying might not be the best thing. But the other thing that I will say then to that is there's a way that I think parents can merge both the play and the academics, and they don't have to be this dichotomous thing that are fighting. Because again, there are studies that say learning is actually a very emotional experience.
Right.
The best learning that happens is actually when people are engaged in positive emotions. Because if you think about it, when you're happy or when you're engaged or you're curious or you have wonder or excitement, you will retain the information that someone is feeding you in a deeper way and be able to then kind of remember that and use that in your future like learning and studying. And so I think there's this thought that like, oh, academics is boring and studying, and then playtime is all fun but like loose, and it's this too extreme.
Right.
But I think we can open our eyes as parents to think, how can we create an environment where learning is also exciting and fun? And the way that I think my practical tip here would be to implement this is to encourage and to acknowledge and praise the effort of learning. Because if you just focus on the academic grade, then learning becomes not fun because it becomes pressure. It either becomes I have to keep maintaining this A+, and then I will do whatever it takes to do that. And it's not really about learning. It's just about the image of a grade. But if you encourage the effort, you can say, what did you learn? Okay, maybe you didn't do so great on that test, but did you learn something in the process? Oh, that's so cool. Like, how can we use this and this? And are you interested in this subject? Or you can make learning fun by still encouraging homework, studying, just maybe emphasizing the journey of learning, not necessarily what grade are you bringing back to me on a report card.
Do you think, as we wrap up this episode, do you think it's too simplistic to say aim for a healthy balance and nudge yourself as a parent and your child, whatever direction you need to nudge them towards academics, towards play, nudge them the way they need to be nudged to reach that healthy middle 50-50 or whatever.
I like that.
Maybe it's that simple.
Yeah.
Is aim for the middle, a balance of the two, and nudge
depending on their personality. Yeah.
Something to think about.
I like it.
Everybody, thanks so much for sticking around for this episode, and we will see you soon.
Go look at some clouds.
Oh, by the way, go look at some clouds. By the way, if you want to look at last episodes right up here, If you want to subscribe, you can do that right down here. We appreciate it. Hit like, make a comment, suggest a topic. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.